Jean-Honoré Fragonard, born April 5, 1732, Grasse, France, died August 22, 1806 in Paris, was a French Rococo painter whose best-known works are characterized by a refined hedonism. Fragonard's works are emblematic of the 18th century and are unique in turning popular genre scenes into reflections on French society through careful use of symbols and generous brushstrokes. The artist's reputation rests on love scenes that possess great semantic intensity, on the use of light and color to transform objects and surroundings into examples of virtuoso craftsmanship that capture the viewer and reward careful study. Jean-Honoré Fragonard was born into a family of artisans and merchants in Grasse. His father was a glover. The family moved to Paris in 1738 when Fragonard was 6 years old. Little is known about the artist's upbringing. He began studying art as a teenager after an unsuccessful painting apprenticeship with a notary. Fragonard studied under two great artists of the previous generation, Jean-Baptiste Siméon Chardin and François Boucher, who strongly influenced the themes and symbolism that would characterize his work throughout his career. Fragonard won the Prix de Rome on his first attempt in August 1752 and became a student at the Royal School of Fine Arts. The swing depicts a young man and woman balancing on a wooden board. The edge of the man's board is on the ground, flanked by two small children, while the woman is raised in the air, her hand holding onto a branch at the top. The landscape is mostly framed by trees, with shades of blue sky and architectural elements visible in the background. At the base of the swing are the remains of a picnic, including an overturned wine bottle. In 18th century painting, the garden was often used as a place for fantasy, and such games were familiar to modern audiences as sexual allegories. This painting was painted when Fragonard was a pupil of Boucher, who was known for his own paintings depicting similar scenes. Fragonard's treatment of this scene is considerably more subtle than Boucher's, although viewers of the time would have recognized a double meaning in the depiction of ripe fruit and blossoming flowers next to the swing, and in the pose of the young girl who leans back with her arms and legs spread. It is unclear, however, whether the children are intended as cupids or whether they are included in the painting to reflect on the governess's seduction. The painting demonstrates Fragonard's early mastery of many of the elements that later came to distinguish his work, including the use of bright colors, strong tonal contrasts, and foliage as a framing element. The painting Bathers depicts a group of women framed by green and yellow foliage and white clouds against a blue sky. The nude women are bathing in a river. The foam from the waves is clearly visible in the lower left corner, and closer to the center of the canvas, the foam creates an indistinct boundary between the bodies and the foliage. The bodies are depicted in a variety of positions. Some figures appear motionless against the waves, while others turn toward the figure in the center of the canvas, who raises her arms and appears to be bouncing above the water, with a pink cape falling out of her right hand. In the 18th century, bathing scenes were often an occasion to show nudes in a variety of poses and angles, demonstrating the artist's skill while providing the viewer with visual pleasure bordering on excitement. The painting demonstrates Fragonard's ease in both subject matter and palette. The delicate colors match the subject, giving the women an innocence that enhances their appeal. The brushstrokes are loose and tangible, giving the painting a sensuality, corporeality, and fluidity. The Swing is one of Fragonard's most famous works, depicting the mistress of the Baron de Saint-Julien. This young girl, located in the center of the composition, is depicted on a swing in a pink dress. She is pushed by a smiling man who does not notice that another man is standing among the bushes and looking up her skirt. The girl's outstretched leg, from which her slipper flies off, points to a sculpture in which the audience recognizes Cupid. The subject of the painting, a girl on a swing being pushed by her husband while her lover looks out from the bushes, her slipper flying off her foot, was dictated to the artist by Baron de Saint-Julien. In the 18th century, the swing was commonly seen as a sexual metaphor because of the rhythm of movement and the position of the body with legs outstretched as the tilt of the swing reached its climax. The loss of shoes often symbolized the loss of innocence. The sculpture of the formidable Cupid adds a serious note to the composition. The sensual pleasure sung in the painting is like a swing, momentary and unstable. The young woman on the swing is like a flower, her skirts like petals, echoing in color and texture those of the shrubbery below, suggesting that she, like the flower, will wither after being plucked. This portrait, probably by Louis-François Pro, a Parisian publisher, belongs to the series now known as Fantastic Figures. The author depicts a man dressed in historical costume, consisting of a yellow and red shirt with white collar and cuffs, with a black bow hanging loosely across his chest, in a pose with a quill and an open book at a desk. The figure turns away from the desk and looks to the right side of the canvas, giving the impression of immediacy and confidence. In this painting, as in others in the same series, the figures appear more like archetypes than individuals, depicted engaged in an activity or with accessories indicating their profession. Fragonard painted each of the portraits in this series in only an hour. It is easy for the viewer to catch the individual brush movements that smoothly convey the loose folds of a shirt sleeve or the zigzag of a cuff. The colors are bright and intensely concentrated, especially on the figure shirt. In The Writer and other works in this series, the energy of the painting process gives the figures vividness. In 1769, Fragonard married Marianne Girard, who was 14 years younger than him. Their marriage was somewhat criticized, in part because a daughter, Henriette Rosalie, was born only a few months after the ceremony. In 1780, the couple had a son, Alexandre Évariste Fragonard, who later studied painting with Jacques-Louis David and became an artist. Just a few years after entering the academy, Fragonard began to disappoint the art establishment, which had seen in him a great hope for French history painting, focusing instead on small paintings, drawings, and etchings of light-hearted scenes that sold well to private clients and on the open market. By the end of the decade, Fragonard was criticized for his professional choices, described by the writer Louis Petit de Bachaumont in 1769 as a painter of ladies' boudoir and dressing rooms. In 1771, Louise d'Épinay summarized in writing to the establishment that Fragonard wastes his time and his talent. He is making money. Fragonard was one of the richest artists of the century. Love Letters is the last of several panels painted by Fragonard for the pavilion of the Countess du Barry at Louveciennes. This series, The Development of Love, illustrates the stages of a romantic relationship, the pursuit of acquaintance, encounters, commitment, friendship. The iconography of each panel is very rich, aided by the garden setting, in which the surrounding sculptures, animals, and plants carry meaning in accordance with established tradition. In Love Letters, a man and a woman read letters while gently embracing. At their feet lies a spaniel symbolizing fidelity, and they are watched by a statue representing friendship who refuses to give the heart she holds in her hands to the Cupid who reaches for it. The Development of Love series demonstrates Fragonard's sense of rhythm in narrative and his ability to create and resolve dramatic tension through the settings in which his figures are placed. In Love Letters, the break in the foliage depicted above serves both to direct the viewer's eye to the couple in the center and to illuminate them. The composition is framed by elements such as flowers, foliage, and sculptures that clarify the main meaning while maintaining the viewer's focus. Attention to mood, conveyed through subtle changes in lighting and texture of brushstrokes, distinguishes Fragonard's work from that of his contemporaries. A trip to the Netherlands, perhaps in 1772 to 1773, increased his admiration for Rembrandt and Hals and is reflected in his later portraits. A second visit to Italy followed in 1773 to 1774. As before, he concentrated on drawing picturesque Italian landscapes rather than painting. On his return to Paris, the family was joined by his wife's 14-year-old sister Marguerite, with whom Fragonard fell passionately in love. As a result, he turned his interests to a new type of subject. domestic scenes inspired by the moral philosophy of Jean-Jacques Rousseau, or romantic novels, or scenes related to child-rearing, often featuring his son Évariste, who was born in 1780. Fragonard uses a dark palette, filling the canvas with black, red, and gold, which gives the painting The Deadbolt a particularly dramatic feel. The painting is a scene where the main source of light appears to be right at the edge of the canvas, illuminating the couple and the deadbolt that gave the work its title. The man, dressed in a white shirt and shorts, standing with his back to the viewer, reaches for this deadbolt with his right hand, while with his left hand he draws the woman in the yellow dress towards him. She throws her head back and to the right, toward the viewer and the light. To the left of the woman is a bed with white sheets and a red canopy, immersed in shadow. The painting is intended as an illustration of worldly love. The circumstances of the encounter described in The Shutter are ambiguous. Questions about the man's motivation and whether the woman consents willingly or under duress remain unclear. However, the objects surrounding the couple suggest the implications of the moment depicted in the painting. The bed is in disarray, and erotic symbols, including an overturned chair, flowers, and fruit, and the deadbolt itself are scattered around the room, all of which were easily readable to an 18th century viewer. The deadbolt is striking in its luminosity and reduced palette, indicating a departure from the lavish Rococo forms and colors for which he is mostly known, and demonstrating his mastery of composition and storytelling staging. Fragonard's brushstrokes are less pronounced in this image. The heightened realism and comparatively sparse, shaded background can be seen as an attempt at a transition to neoclassicism and a foreshadowing of 19th century romanticism. In the last years before the French Revolution, Fragonard finally turned to neoclassical subject matter and developed a less free neoclassical style of painting, the Fountain of Love, circa 1785, that becomes increasingly evident in his later works, especially in the genre scenes done in collaboration with Marguerite Gérard. Fragonard's art was too closely associated with the pre-revolutionary period to make it acceptable during the Revolution, which also deprived him of patrons. At first, he withdrew to Grasse, but in 1791 he returned to Paris, where, through the patronage of the leading neoclassical painter Jacques-Louis David, he obtained a position on the Museum Commission, but lost it in 1797. He spent the rest of his life in obscurity, hardly painting at all. His death in 1806 went almost unnoticed, and his work remained unfashionable until 1850. Fragonard, along with Watteau, is considered one of the two great French painter-poets of the 18th century. His style, based mainly on that of Rubens, was fast, energetic, and flowing, never stilted or fussy like that of many of his contemporaries. Fragonard had only two serious students, his wife Marie-Anne Fragonard and her younger sister Marguerite Gérard. His work influenced many contemporary imitators and competitors, although none of these artists reached the same level of virtuosity as Fragonard himself, and their names have generally been forgotten. Fragonard's influence, brought about by the radical change in tastes during the French Revolution, transcended two generations, and interest in his work was revived after Edmond and Jules de Goncourt gave him a prominent role in their book, The Art of the 18th Century, published in 1865. Fragonard's work quickly gained popularity, leading to the rediscovery of the Progress of Love series, which had been forgotten in Grasse. His work with paint, with its attention to light and reliance on quick, expressive brushstrokes, strongly influenced the Impressionists, especially Berthe Morisot and Pierre-Auguste Renoir. His most famous work, The Swing, has become iconic. Thanks for watching to the end. Likes and comments are a great way to support the channel.